I wanted to thank you for taking time to speak with me today.
Yeah, dude, it's a pleasure.
Absolutely.
I wanted to congratulate you on an album that kicks ass from top to bottom. How long did it take to put the material together?
Too long.
Yeah, too long. About 2 years.
Yeah.
Well, it's time well spent because this album is great from top to bottom, my friends. You should be very proud of your job you did on the album.
We appreciate that.
I wanted to ask you, how did the name come to you for the band?
We kind of were shooting ideas back and forth to each other. We had roughly around like 8 to 10, and just Cyphen just kind of stuck out about more than the other ones did.
Yeah, it was the one that we kept lingering back to, and decided it stuck. So here we are.
And I wanted to ask you about the track Statues. To me, that's a standout track. It's one of my favorites on the album.
Really? Yeah.
Yes. Can you talk to me about the song and how it came to you?
So that one kind of started where our guitarist Will, unfortunately, he's at work right now, working in an arena. But he randomly came up with that signature kind of guitar tone that you hear at the intro of the song and kind of sprinkled throughout. And it just stuck in my head. And then we eventually moved it over to a bass line, and we just built off of that one progression kind of a thing. And everyone else's voices just kept speaking and adding flavor and juices here and there. And next thing we know, that like the song's roaring.
And another one of the standout tracks to me is Better Off. I wanted to ask if you could speak on that track as well.
What's funny about that track is that we wrote that track, what was it, a week before our first show, when we were all like solidified, like these were the members of the band. We were kind of just sitting in a dark room together, just kind of, Will was just playing with his new pedal that he had, which is his delay pedal. Yeah. And he just started playing this like really beautiful melody. And Josiah joined in after that, and then Cody joined in. And I'm just looking through my little notebook of lyrics that I have whenever I'm like have free time I write with, and I start singing, and we all kind of like look at each other and we're like, whoa. And Cody even looks at me at one point and he's like, record. And I'm like, what? And he's like, record. So we actually wrote Better Off on the fly, and then we've kind of molded it throughout all the live shows that we've played, and kind of made it to the perfection that what it is that you hear now on the album.
And you've had a chance to tour with some great bands. Some I've actually interviewed. September Morning, I've interviewed quite a few times throughout the years and followed their career. How was it like playing with September Morning?
That one's always fun. I think that like I was able to open up in my previous band, but I mean, they're always a joy. So the fact that I was able to do it with these guys in this band, that like they always put on, high theatrics. They're always just super nice, and that like very helpful as well.
Yeah, they were wicked.
I wanted to ask you as well, and going over the album, what are your lyrical inspirations for your tracks?
Basically just kind of whatever mental state we try to stay away from, really. And we've all been in that kind of dark, or going down that dark road. But then that was pretty much all of them are that way. Or are they? Yeah, I think they're all pretty much just kind of a little bit dark. Statues is one that kind of has a brighter side to it. I can't think of the lyrics all off the top of my head, but then the one lyrically that stands out is Ophidian. It's literally, I wrote those lyrics, and it's all about snakes. That's all it is. It's not supposed to be anything bad or anything. It's just like, I don't know, snakes are pretty metal, so I'm going to write about those.
How did we get here? How did the band form?
to this magical man right here.
Hello. So yeah, Will, our guitarist, who, like I said, isn't here unfortunately. Him and I were in our last project together, and like how most like seemingly decent up and coming bands do, is they implode from the inside and everything. I mean, just turns to fire. That like, but little time went by, I realized just I wasn't done. I still had the itch to just rock and play, and was able to catch wind of his vocals from one of my buddies he was working with, and his phenomenal vocals were kind of that key puzzle piece. I felt like I was needing to really fully get in and fully commit kind of a thing. And then we found out one guy, but he just, as a drummer, but he wasn't the best fit, and then he came crawling along, and then within a couple minutes of us just jamming or whatever, we're just all looking at each other just okay, and he's just slaying as if he's been playing these songs for years within minutes.
Yeah, I was a big fan of their Cody's and Will's previous band, so I kind of already had the vibe that they were going for still, and I was friends with Will through my wife, and he's like, "Hey, you want to come jam?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure. When and where?" And he's like, "Tonight. Come over to my buddy's house."
Our drummer
okay.
flaked.
Pretty much.
So yeah, I came over, and like he said, they started shooting me songs, and we they let me listen to them while they run through them, and they had a couple of recordings with the drummer that they had before me, and I was like, okay, so based on that and based on their previous band, I guess this is what they want, and it just immediately clicked.
Well, what lies ahead for you? What's the next step? Will you tour?
We are planning on touring. We're getting a bunch of contacts set up right now to be able to reach out and get those shows going. We're really looking at doing a bunch of out-of-state shows this year.
Mhm.
These last 2 years, we've kind of like stayed local to the Lincoln, Nebraska area, and we've been itching. We're ready to get out there and show more people like who we are and what we're about. We just know that, you know, it's going to be one of those things where people are going to hear us that one time, and it's just going to click. And it's just going to be, once that starts happening, it's going to be a freight train that doesn't have brakes from there.
Yeah, I know if you come to Ohio, you'll be well welcomed here. We love our metal. We love our rock and roll here. It's something that's very strong and in all the clubs.
Excellent.
We would love to join.
A lot of people and countries are going through this phase where pop artists are taking up clubs and stuff, and it's the exact opposite here. It doesn't exist here.
Well, that's good. That's refreshing.
I wanted to ask you as well, in recording the album, was there a material that didn't make the cut, maybe because of time restriction, or it didn't quite fit, that'll go on to a future release?
Not really. We kind of ended up, I'd say probably a little over a year ago, we decided that we wanted to add more songs. There were a couple songs. Statues was one of them that was supposed to be on the next album.
Yeah.
And we were like, we have it down. We should do it. We should record it now.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, all the songs that we wanted to be on this album are on this album.
Mm-hmm. I think the only thing maybe to add to that was our first 3 singles that we released, Our Hell Out of Me, Absence, and All My Sins. They were recorded through a different producer, though we just were not very enthused about the quality that when we finally got them. So if anything, those 3 were going to be potentially on the back burner if we did run out of time, but thankfully we're able to just re-record, get everything sounding just the way we wanted.
Yep.
I wanted to ask each of you if you could take a moment and tell me how your musical career started. We'll start with the drummer.
Oh, okay. All right. So Geez, this is a long story, but I'll try to keep it brief. In fourth grade, I was introduced to doing concert band, and I wanted to be a saxophone player because I thought the instrument looked cool, but we already had one.
He's
So-
not wrong about that, though.
So I was suggested drums, specifically snare drum, just because, it's little kids playing music. So then I had to sign a thing. My parents had to sign it and said that I needed 2 years of piano. So immediately from that point, I was like, I'm going to be the best drummer that I can be without ever learning how to play piano. And I
didn't know
still,
that. I didn't know that.
I still I could probably listen to like an easier piano part and slowly figure my way out through it, but I can't just sit down and play a piano still. So I'm still riding that horse. But then as the years went on, I started to get better and quicker in my rudiments and just everything that I was learning. And then my dad opened me up to like all his classic rock. I listened to a lot of classic rock growing up anyway, but then he really went through it with me and was like, play a song. Who is this? What album is it off of? And then just started to get that. And then he introduced me to like Van Halen and Rammstein. And I was like, oh, music doesn't get heavier than this. And then on my own, I found out that it definitely does. So for me, just going through the whole experience of learning drums was just, I was trying to see how fast, how hard I could just rock, basically. And I didn't know about triggers either until I was probably almost 19. I didn't know how people were getting just such a clear sound on their drums and for every single hit. So I figured out how to make that sound and be fast. So I was a hard hitter and I was fast. And on top of that, I was in football and basketball. So I was in really good shape for playing a whole kit. And then at one point, I was the only drummer when we would do football. So I think it was my senior year because I had torn both my ACLs, unfortunately, in football. And as I recovered from the first one, I was able to sit behind a drum kit for pep band and learned every single part and had every single part of pep band songs memorized and would play it on the full kit, cymbal parts, tom part, everything. I had the whole thing memorized and didn't really get much credit for that from the band director. So it was just like that little bit of like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm just going to keep doing it. I am so good at this. So then that just led me to get into like Slipknot, Avenged Sevenfold, and then from there it was Cannibal Corpse, Cattle Decapitation, and just ridiculously heavy metal and trying to figure that stuff out. So that's kind of where I'm at now. And then playing with Cyphen is just me getting my groove on. But that's about where I'm at now.
The vocalist.
Yeah, I grew up in a family full of musicians, and I was around music my entire life. And so growing up, being able to like listen to my grandpa being in a band and my uncle being in a band and stuff like that. My dad was a singer, still is, and just growing up, then it was more of just them taking me out and doing like karaoke and stuff like that. And I've always been around the 2000s hard rock, the Seether, Shinedown, that type of stuff, and that's kind of like where the majority of like my vocal like tone comes from, is that like more grungy style, some Pearl Jam stuff like that, and then kind of got more into metal once I got into like high school. Started like listening to like Beartooth, Miss May I, bands like that. And I was like, I want to learn how to do that. Like, I want to be able to do those compressed vocals or those screams that, other people would term them as. And so I did, and I was like, that's really cool. But like, I want to be, and then I like the band Miss May I was one of the, or Memphis Mayfire was one of those really big bands to me, because I wanted to be like Matty Mullins, where he was doing the screams and then turning around and just being able to just sing was like such beauty. And I was like, I want that. I want to be able to do that. But learning how to scream obviously is one of those things, right? It was never professional for me. I kind of just learned off of a whim. So it was like every time I would do it for like a good 30 minutes, and it's like, oh no, I don't have a voice. So I had to like kind of teach myself how to like do all that to be able to get it through. And then I kind of like laid low for a little bit and wrote songs and sang as much as I could. Then joined another band, and they ended up having a falling out. And then that's when, you know, I was invited over to meet with Cody, and then it's been, you know, the high road since then. It's been nothing but fun.
And I think that's one of the greatest progressions as far as metal of the last 15 or so years, is that the ability of vocalists to switch styles on a whim. Like first time I heard Sleep Token, I hear this guy and I'm like, this guy just fucking switched it on a dime, man. How the fuck did he do that? You know, and you're just astounded by it, because it's something my generation didn't hear before, this automatic switch on a dime like that. And you're just astounded by how someone can control the pressure in their vocals and make that switch on a dime, and it's flawless.
Mm-hmm. And I, to this day, I still am teaching myself and learning how to keep progressing with my vocals and how to take care of them correctly.
Your turn, my friend. Guitars.
Yeah, bassist act.
Bassist. That's right. Guitars is not here.
That's right. Guitar was the first instrument I picked up, but my story is a little shorter. I got bored of Guitar Hero, and then one of my friends gave me a real guitar. There's really not much more than that. It just, the fun and enjoyment kept growing, and realizing I could do more and more. And then I'm in a band and playing for a live audience, and it's what I love to do. It's just awesome.
Yeah, it's amazing how we come into, you know, where we're at. I remember being a kid going, you know, I wanted to be the drummer, and went to the music store with my dad, and he's like, look at the price of drum kits. He goes, hey, how about the guitar, son? You know, I got the Yamaha acoustic guitar, you know, start out on, and that's how that started, you know. And
Yeah.
it's amazing to hear stories of how it actually progresses. I wanted to ask you each, when someone comes to see you live, what can they expect?
Very high energy music, and just a lot of fun. We like to have fun with each other on stage, and we're definitely a band that when you're coming to see us, you're not really like coming to just watch musicians on stage, you know, perfecting their craft. It's we're on stage having fun with each other, and we're bouncing off with the crowd and making sure that like they get to feel like they are involved, and so they get to be able to love more of like what they're watching. Because there's a lot of bands out there where you go and see them and they're on stage just playing their music. That's just what they're doing. Right. And so the way that I see it is that when it comes to people coming to our shows, we want to let them have as much fun as we're having on stage.
And that's so important, because if I'm gonna spend my hard-earned money to see a band, I want to see a band that entertains me. If I want to hear your album, I'll just put it on at home.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I wanted to ask you as well, in looking forward, what do you feel will be the next step for you? Will there be a video, another release?
Right now it's mostly us trying to get out of state. That like we are working on more songs. I'd say we're probably about halfway there on like being able to have another album kind of a thing. So it's all just due time kind of a thing, that like be able to get our name a little more spread, sell some merch, be able to get the funds to be able to do it all.
Yeah.
That like a lot of stuff like that. So always wanting to just move forward though. That like we don't want to stay here. It's cold.
You're not gonna have much fun here on Friday. It's not 7, so.
Ah,
But I wanted to ask you as well. Speaking of getting money and funds together for next album, what's the best way to get physical copy of the album and any merchandise that you have?
Definitely by hitting us up through any social media sites with Cyphen Official, or going to cyphenband.com as well. You can email us. We don't currently have an online running merch store, but we are getting in the works of doing that. But anybody who does want a CD or an album, if you hit us up, we will mail them to you guys.
Especially a CD.
Yep. And
shirts, anything like that.
so you guys can be able to get that and be able to enjoy and love that album.
Email us if you want it signed. It's an extra $1 though.
Lastly, I wanted to ask you guys, if you could give a message to your fans, what would that message be?
Keep rocking. Don't stop. Just don't stop. That's the biggest thing. If they
Well, I wanted to take a moment. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, if you do stop rocking, at least keep coming to our shows. We appreciate it.
I wanted to take a moment again to thank you for creating an album that I enjoyed from top to bottom. I can't wait to hear what comes next from you, and I can't wait for you to come to Ohio, my friends.
We
Yeah,
can't
that'd
either.
be
And
awesome.
we appreciate you so much for
Yes.
giving it a listen and reaching out and talking to us, because it's been fun.
Well, thank you, my friends, and you have a great rest of your night.
Thanks.
as
You
well.
as well. Thank you.
Cheers.
Rock on.